you laughing at my enthusiasm? We will proceed to our next candidate for this evening, and that will be Mr. Johnny Edwards.
Good evening. I know there's a lot of things going on, so how do you prefer to be greeted? Just a hand wave?
Let's just do a hand wave.
And hello to the community as well.
Good evening, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. Following our interview questions this evening, you will have the opportunity to make concluding remarks and ask questions as time allows. We've had the opportunity to review your resume. Please tell us how your background and experiences make you a good fit to be our next superintendent.
So first and foremost, I just would like to thank the entire school board for giving me the opportunity to interview for this superintendent vacancy. My name is Johnny Edwards, and I'm coming to you by way of my current district of Kalamazoo Public Schools. Lansing School District is pretty special or personal to me. Not only did I graduate from Michigan State University, I had the opportunity to do my student teaching here in Lansing School District. I actually did my student teaching at what was then called Dwight Rich Middle School, and did the year-long experience through Michigan State's Teacher College of Education program. And then I also had the opportunity to begin my career here at C.W. Otto Middle School. So I had the opportunity to teach middle school here in Lansing School District, had the opportunity to coach basketball at the middle school level, eventually became the athletic director. So Lansing, in some ways, personal to me, between my college experience and working for Lansing School District. I spent about 8 years in the Lansing area, so I'm quite familiar with the community. Also, what interests me in the position is the diversity and the mix of children, families, community members here in the Lansing area. In many ways, what you see in our community here in Lansing mirrors what's in Kalamazoo. So I like the mix of diversity in terms of students' ethnicity, in terms of students' socioeconomic status, in terms of students' languages, religious beliefs, values, sexual orientation, all of the realm of things that make up diversity. I am familiar with working with those, with all students, all families. And so for me, this is like coming full circle where I began my career and an opportunity to continue my career.
Thank you. Please share an example of a time you have led a sustained multi-year improvement initiative. Be specific regarding the situation, the task at hand, your specific role, and the outcome.
So I'm currently the Director of Secondary Education with the Kalamazoo Public Schools. In this role, I oversee 9 schools, 9 secondary schools, and that is comprised of 4 comprehensive middle schools, 1 alternative middle school, 2 comprehensive high schools, then we have an alternative high school, and then I have what we call the alternative high school, a small, more web-based alternative program in our high schools. Those 9 schools comprise of 6,500 students. One of the major initiatives that I took on when I began my tenure as the Director of Secondary Education was to rethink the way we do high school alternative education. And at the time, our alternative high school was budgeted and expected to have close to 200 students. But when I entered the position, our enrollment peaked at like 120 students. So here it is, we've budgeted, we've staffed, we have a principal, we have support staff, expecting 200 students. Our enrollment was 120 students. Our average daily attendance was probably roughly 80 students. So on a daily basis, we were not filling our capacity or our needs within the school. So with the direction of our superintendent and our school board, I co-led a committee to think about ways in which we can beef up our alternative education. This was a year-long committee. We wanted to better understand why we were losing children to other districts' alternative education program. We have the Kalamazoo Promise, in which our students could earn up to 100% of their tuition. So students were walking away from the Promise Scholarship and going to neighboring districts. And we felt as though our children should stay home and they should be educated with us. And so after doing the year-long committee, that committee comprised of teachers on the staff, the principal, a board member, other central office staff members. And after a year of studying, I co-led some recommendations in order for us to beef up what we were doing as it relates to alternative education. One of the things that we did differently was we revised the start time to the school. The school formerly started at 9:30 a.m. and concluded at 4:30 p.m. Initially, they thought that was a great idea because kids could sleep in and get to school on time. Well, ultimately, by the school ending at 4:30, students who had jobs, family obligations, wanted to leave early and not complete the entire school day. So one of our recommendations included us removing the start time from 9:30 a.m. going to 7:30 a.m. We applied for a waiver through the Michigan Department of Education. Our school day concluded at 1 o'clock p.m. This gave our students an opportunity to take on those jobs that they needed to do in order to, fend for themselves in some cases. Some of them had family obligations. After 1 o'clock, we were able to have mentoring for students who needed a little additional support. Students could continue with some homework and some tutoring. And this program we revised in 2013, implemented in 2014. Our enrollment grew from 120 students to 200 students. So we were able to educate more than 80 additional students in this first year. We've continued that path. We've also looked at incorporating some Saturday school components to that to round out the education. In one of our classes, we graduated 100 students from the school. Previously, their highs were in the 30s. So that's a sustained multi-year project that I co-led with our school board superintendent, members of that alternative education staff. The school is still vibrant today, and it's a great alternative for students who need something different than our comprehensive high schools.
Managing vision and purpose involves anticipating future trends, creating a compelling vision, and communicating that vision. Describe a situation that conveys your capability in this area.
So when I think about future trends and vision, I would think back to my time as a principal and now leading into director. At the time that I started at the school, I was a high school principal prior to becoming director, and I was a high school principal in KPS as well. So I've been in KPS now for 12 years. One of the trends that I saw on the horizon in 2008 was related to online education. We had a number of students who were struggling academically during the school day, and their only option to gain additional credits, their only option was either to attend summer school or take an additional class after 2:30. Neither of those options were appealing to students. Summer school, as you know, is just one way to try to subsidize what did not occur during the school year. But we looked at online education. What we were able to do was to create an online program during the school day in which a certified teacher was able to educate upwards to 20 students in a class period. So in at that time we were doing a 4x4 block. Now we have a trimester schedule. So now a teacher can educate upwards to 80 students a day, and students are able to earn credit in the spaces they need to earn credit. So if I'm behind mathematically or English, I can go into a room and take online education courses during the school day versus in the evening or on my own time. One of the advantages of that is we realized that some students did not enjoy retaking the same course all over again the same way. So they needed something different. That work expanded to me becoming a director, and then our second comprehensive high school took on the initiative. We initially started with a program that was called NovaNet. It is now considered Grad Point. So we offer online education during the school day. 12 years ago, that was not the norm. That was on the horizon. Through some of my work with Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals and attending conferences, I realized that this was another opportunity for students to earn credit. And so the online education today is pretty normal. You have Michigan Virtual High School. You have a number of other vendors providing that particular service. But 12 years ago, it was groundbreaking. We were able to do a lot of good things for children to help them earn credit and be able to graduate from high school.
Please tell us what the term culturally competent means to you. Give an example of how you demonstrate this characteristic and your experience in bringing a diverse group of people to consensus on a difficult issue.
So the term culturally competent has evolved over time. And I think about culturally competency related to the stages from the National Center of Cultural Competency out of Georgetown University. It talks about the 6 stages of cultural competency. It starts on the low end of the spectrum of looking at what's considered to be culturally destructive. Then it moves to cultural incapacity, cultural blindness, cultural pre-competency, cultural competence, and then cultural proficiency. So it's a spectrum there. For me, what you'll see from me is I'm a person that embrace all cultures, race, ethnicities, and the like. I embrace, I welcome, I can work with people from various backgrounds. You don't have to look like me, you don't have to speak like me in order for me to get along with you. I believe that being culturally competent requires us to read more, interact more with people that we don't normally interact with. And what I've found in the work that I've been doing in public education over 19 years is our students and family want to feel welcome. And the way in which you approach or greet them on an ongoing and regular basis is what helps you to get over any cultural barriers that you may have in your own personal background. You'll also know from me is if I see a staff member, a kid, or someone in my presence that's demonstrating something culturally destructive or culturally blind, I'm going to call it out. I have a responsibility as an administrator, as a leader, to model my expectation that I would have for people that I'm working with or working around. And you can correct or help a person out respectfully and help them to say, you know, that's not an appropriate term. I don't expect to hear that in our environment. In terms of bringing groups together, we started what we call culturally relevant education in Kalamazoo Public Schools. We felt as though we needed to do a better job with equipping our staff members to bring them along that cultural competency spectrum. And in bringing that diverse group together, initially there was some resistance. Some administrators or teachers may have thought we were calling them out. Some of them felt as though they were above or beyond needing to be trained in culturally relevant education. And given the size of our district, we started with our secondary teachers first, then in year 2 moved to elementary. We're still doing the work. The work comprises of us training trainers within our school district, doing professional development, back to school professional development, around culturally relevant education. It requires us to have small vignettes of videos and articles that we test drive with principals during administrative meetings, and we ask them to test drive those with their staff members during their staff meetings, an opportunity to stimulate conversations around culturally relevant education. And the reason why I speak upon the spectrum is depending on where you are in a certain situation in your life or in a situation, you may need help working with different groups or different ethnicities or different community organizations. And it's okay to go in and say, you know what, I want to better understand this in order to drive up my cultural competency into cultural proficiency.
Tell us how you maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and community groups.
And I'm just going to add students too, because I think accessibility is important for students as well. So for me, you would see me as a superintendent connecting with staff and students inside the school, in the school day, conducting walkthroughs to monitor instruction with central administration, with principals, and making sure what we're saying on paper match the practice in our classrooms. In terms of accessibility, I think my accessibility would have to be in person as well as virtual, whether that's email communication, social media, Twitter, Instagram, and the like. I'm a little slow to social media by professional choice, but I do understand that is another vehicle or tool. But you'll see me visiting classrooms, school plays, athletic events or contests, extracurricular activities, art shows, and the like. You'll see me there interacting with staff and students. Want to try to build relationships with our staff members to better understand their stories. How did they land in Lansing School District? Were they born here? Did they graduate from one of our high schools? What is it that drives them to do what they do every day for our children? In terms of parents, you currently have the Parent Community Advisory Council. I would look to obviously fall in line with what you already have in place and to evaluate and observe that particular event. I believe you offer daycare and some food and things of that nature for your community members, all of which are great. But I would definitely continue along that path and make sure that there are opportunities to engage our community members and our parents. Also for students, I would create a superintendent advisory council where I would meet with a small group of high school students from each high school on a monthly basis. It's a way for me to pulse what's going on in the district from the students' perspective, and for them to get to know me and push my thinking and learning as it relates to what's going on in their world. I would develop a teacher advisory council where I would meet monthly with a group of teachers representing one from your 24 or 26 buildings to talk about what's going on in our district as it relates to things like that. For community groups, being at nonprofit organizations, fundraisers, events, banquets, celebrations, and the like, it's important that if we want people to partner with us, they need to see my presence there at their events as well. So I believe I'll try to cover the spectrum of student, staff, parents, community groups by just being around and being in all the places that I need to be. And you learn those very quickly when a person email you and say, I didn't see you last night. So I look forward to just kind of work with those various groups to figure out the places we need to be at the right time. But I'm a hands-on person and like to be accessible at all times to the fullest extent possible.
Often we learn from successfully facing challenges or experiencing mistakes or failures. Please share a time when this was the case for you. What did you learn from the experience? How did you apply what you learned?
So as an administrator, I've been an administrator now for 16 years. And as an administrator, there are a number of decisions that are made. And there are people who will agree with you. There will be people who disagree with you. In the end, you're going to make a mistake in a decision, and you have to learn from that. I think about my time as a principal. One of the things that stick out most is probably we offer 3 lunch periods, and the middle lunch always bothered me because the students who had the middle lunch, they attended class for like 35 minutes. They have a 30-minute lunch, and then they go back to that class for the last 35 minutes. And it's a huge disruption to their education. And as a professional, I didn't want to teach a class like that, and I didn't like that. We were kind of confined to our enrollment and our lunch. So over time, I met with kids and teachers and said, what would happen if we were to try to consolidate this middle lunch and just go with 2 lunches? We studied how many lunches we served on a daily basis. We studied students taking classes off campus during lunch periods. In the end, the following school year, we started with a 2-lunch procedure. And after a week, I didn't like what 2 lunches looked like because it was just too many kids, and they weren't moving to the gym like we tried to tell them, you can go to the gym and hang out. We have a secure courtyard. You can go to the courtyard to eat lunch. They weren't moving there. And so after a week, I realized it was a mistake. And I owned up to it. I told the teachers and staff my intent was good. I was looking at academics. I wanted to disband the second lunch. In the end, we walked away from the decision. Had I had the opportunity to do it again, I probably would have done the same seed planting. I probably would have just told our staff and students, we're going to pilot this for 2 weeks, okay? Let's just do it as a pilot. Let's take some feedback. And that way the students know it will end at some point every day during the experience. How long are we going to do this? How long are we going to do this? Had I just said, let's pilot this out, see how it works for a week or 2. And if it's successful, revisit it. If not, we don't revisit it. And I learned you never solve a problem by creating another one.
Please describe how you would work to create a learning and working environment that is welcoming, inclusive, and increasingly diverse. How would you make sure that this is supported across the district and community?
So as a leader, it's my responsibility to model what I would expect of others. And so to create a learning environment, I must be able to demonstrate my learning and growth over time as well. Push those that are reporting to me and those who work, that are supervised in the whole ladder within an organization, is to model the expectations for everyone. A welcome environment requires us to have a standard or an expectation. Principals, are we calling our own numbers to hear how our secretaries answer the phone? When a parent calls the school, do they get a person or do they get an automated machine? And principals, have you left a message for someone? Tell them to call you back and see how long it is before they respond to your call. And so in talking about creating a welcoming environment, we have to model that. I have to be responsive to the board, responsive to the community, responsive to other teachers and administrators, and also have that responsiveness be a model for administrators, teachers, and staff. I work with our administrators and say, when you get a call from a parent and you maybe don't know the answer, it's okay to call them and say, you know what, I don't have the answer right now. Let me work on the situation and give you a call back. That way they know you're just not putting them on hold for days and you ignored their call. So in terms of welcoming response, that's something that has to be model. Inclusive diversity, again, modeling that for our staff and our students. We've developed classroom diverse libraries in Kalamazoo Public Schools where we've put diverse literature in elementary classrooms. So when a student wants to read a particular book, it's not the standard stereotypical books that I read 20, 30 years ago. So we're trying to pump in classroom libraries, diverse classroom libraries into our elementary levels. But in terms of our community and our district, whatever our goal is, heavy emphasis in Kalamazoo related to literacy, and we're defining literacy as reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We have Lift Up Through Literacy programs in our community, and that's where we're drumbeating that we're trying to drive literacy for every single student, but Lift Up Through Literacy is for students and family members. And we're hiring our teachers and retired educators to train our parents on how to work with their children as it relates to literacy. Those programs are held monthly, not in our schools, but in our local churches and in our local community organizations. We want to take the programs where our parents and children feel comfortable with: the local rec center, the local church, the local nonprofit organization. That's just an example of what I've been a part of in my time within KPS, because we know that to work with literacy is not just telling a kid that he or she needs to read, but being able to model what good reading looks like, what it sounds like with our families as well. So as we work through any initiative related to the school district, we have to drumbeat our message to every single person in our community so that they can speak the same language we have. They can develop partnering programs for us and our children.
How do you recruit, develop, and lead a management team? Give us an example of how you've done this in the past.
Okay, so recruit and develop and lead. So first of all, in terms of not just simply our management team, and I'm interpreting management team as our executive team and administrators and the like, but the recruitment needs to be for all staff members, teachers as well, because we want to be able to hire the best staff members in our school district, and we also want to be able to build career ladders and opportunities for us to be able to promote within, and teachers to know that they can one day be an instructional coach, they can one day be an assistant principal or principal and the like. So that recruitment is informal and formal. Every interaction that you're having with people is a way to engage where they are at that position in their life or career. I've been able to do a number of things as a principal and director. So in terms of development for me looks like meeting with the management or the executive team at least weekly, and also one-on-one as well. One-on-one meetings wouldn't necessarily have to be weekly, but it would have to be frequent enough where everyone knows monthly or quarterly that's a one-on-one time to talk with the team, work through issues. As well, my time as a principal, I have 4 assistant principals. 3 of them aspire to be principals. We work to develop those assistant principals into principals. So all 3 of them today are principals in KPS at the secondary level. As a director, 2 other assistant principals. One is some mentoring and coaching. They like what they witnessed with my other 3 assistant principals. So of those 2, another one is a principal in our district, and that second assistant principal is now a high school principal in a neighboring district. One of my support staff members, he was a behavior specialist, aspired to be an administrator, worked to develop him and give him some leadership opportunities. He's now an assistant principal in our school district. So my leadership style is not about micromanagement. I want people to be clear about their job descriptions. I want to better understand their job descriptions. I want people to work collaboratively. I work collaboratively. I expect to hear voices in the room. I don't believe that my voice should be the only voice, and I don't believe that I always necessarily have the best idea. I think the group can come together sometimes and come up with the best idea. And I think when you give people opportunities to lead in their various areas, they get a sense of pride and ownership in the work that they do. And it helps drive up their knowledge, and not necessarily just their work, but their knowledge within the district. They become a better asset when the superintendent, or when I'm not around, or when they're leading a project. So people need opportunities to lead and grow and able to, in order for them to be developed. So I've been developed by veteran superintendents, both in Saginaw and in Kalamazoo. I've been developed by veteran principals when I was an assistant principal. So I believe it's a part of the profession to pay it forward and develop those that work with you.
Describe how you go about engaging and affirming staff members.
So I mentioned a little bit about a teacher advisory council. I think that would be an opportunity to engage at least monthly with a group of teachers from throughout the district. That's an opportunity to engage. But that affirmation piece could be done sometimes formally in front of the board at a board meeting. That affirmation could be personal within walkthroughs. We track advanced placement progress in Kalamazoo Public Schools. Some of our teachers have done a phenomenal job with raising the AP scores. That personal walkthrough to say to Mr. or Mrs. whomever, hey, notice your data. You did a great job as it relates to your AP scores. People get a sense of, oh, wow, superintendent knows my name. He's tracking data. That's pretty cool. And then that type of message, goes throughout the organization. That, can you believe this is what happened to me? The superintendent knows me, or is tracking progress. So that affirmation should occur both formally and informally. As teachers get awards, we should celebrate those awards, accomplishments, and achievements. Our staff members, support staff members do an outstanding job. I believe you started some work with recognizing your custodial staff in your Bright Side newsletter, opportunity to showcase success of students and staff. Your February showcase you do each year, another opportunity to celebrate what's going on great in your school district. When people know that they feel valued about the organization, they're more likely to stay and hang around, knowing that we're going to lose some folk because of retirements and the like. But ultimately, people want to know that you care about the work that they do, and I would model that for our administrators here.
How do you go about making decisions on controversial issues?
I think there's my bottom line focus on anything controversial is what's best for our students. And that has to remain at the backdrop of every decision, whether it's controversial or not. But when it comes to hot button items, as a superintendent, I need to listen to the different voices. And I'm okay with talking with students or teachers, administrators, the executive team, school board members. I need to better understand the culture. I would need to better understand the history, because sometimes you can step your foot into something that gives you pushback because you didn't listen. So I'm a listener, I'm a collaborator. In the end, I want to keep at the backdrop what's best for our students. And I'm okay test driving ideas or decisions by people to get a different viewpoint and say, hey, if we go down this road, what barriers do you anticipate? What pushback do you anticipate? Where do we need to get more ownership? I used to think about buy-in. Now I'm more about ownership, and buy-in is trying to convince people to get on board with you. Ownership is making sure they're already on board before you proceed down a path or a road. So we want to get more ownership in decisions. In the end, I understand as a superintendent, there will be decisions that have to be made from the chair, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not going to make a controversial decision without test driving, listening, and have the opportunity to speak with others in the room to better understand the situation, not just from my lens, but from all the other lenses within the organization and within the community.
Tell us what budget development process you use and how you gain broad support for the final result.
All right, budget process. On my resume, you will see that I have a Chief Financial Officer certification through Michigan School Business Officials. That's a voluntary certification that I went about seeking. I wanted to round out my education background by having a school finance background. I taught mathematics, so I love numbers, I love data, and budgets are somewhat like a puzzle to me. That was a strength of mine as a kid, and that's what led me into education. But in terms of the process, one, to get broad support, our budget needs to align with the mission and vision of our school district and our community and what's important there first. And you can get ideas about a budget. You can test drive ideas with students. You can test drive ideas with that teacher advisory council, test drive ideas through your parent community advisory council, board committees, board subcommittees. And that budgeting process is actually a year-long process. It intensifies in the last 6 months, which is basically January to June. And we understand as a board, we have to adopt the budget, a balanced budget prior to, by June 30th. So in terms of processes, I want to look at our monies available within our existing budget that we anticipate will not be spent by June 30th. That's one. We want to look at any one-time purchases we can make prior to June 30th. So if we're going to adopt a new curriculum or adopt a new set of textbooks, the opportunity to do that oftentimes is on the current cycle if there's anticipated funds available that would not be spent prior to June 30th. And then as we roll into our budget process, we're looking for our additional FTE allocation, foundation allowance from the state, whatever number that is from year to year, it fluctuates. The current proposal from the state governor looks pretty favorable for most districts like Lansing, whether that's an increase of $200 per student, $250 per student. So we need to put that in our budgeting process. We also need to look at our student enrollment change. Ideally, we want to look at a growth in enrollment. Your enrollment grew this past year, which is phenomenal. Speaks to the work that you've been doing. So we want to look at our increases in enrollment, but an increase in enrollment also oftentimes lead to an increase in staff, what additional teachers we need to hire. We also have to look at our raises, steps, and the like. We look at attrition, our savings from retirements, veteran, more high-paid employees, bringing in newer employees on the lower end. That's an attrition savings. But we also have to look at expenses related to our health care, the costs associated with the rising health care, if there are any additional costs related to retirements and mandatory fees. So in the end, we want our budget to tell a story. We want our budget to reflect the values within the school district and our community. We want to keep a good, solid fund balance, not too high, not too low, but a solid fund balance. And we want to do and make sure that those values align with what's best for children and raising student achievement. So that's kind of the budgeting process as a group. And the only group I left out was probably union leadership. You need to make sure your union leadership has an understanding or appreciation, because you oftentimes have to negotiate salaries, wages, and benefits each year or whatever cycle you have.
What does an effective relationship between the board and superintendent look like, and how do you cultivate such a relationship?
So the relationship need to have a number of pillars. I think The pillars need to be around communication, and I think the communication is not just one-way communication of the board to the superintendent, but also the superintendent to the board. I have a responsibility to keep you apprised of what's going on in the school district. You should not hear about things that's going on in the school district from community members or the like. I should be able to communicate those things to you based on the way in which you want that information conveyed to you. I think another pillar would have to be collaboration. That collaboration requires us to work together on even difficult issues. But a collaborative mindset just walks in and say, you know, in the end of the day, we want to keep, again, what's best for our children, no personal agendas, what's best for the body, what's the common voice of the board. Another pillar would probably have to be some measure of trust, mutual trust. You have to hire the superintendent and be able to trust that they're able to work with the operations of the school district. Then I also have to trust and work with the school board as it relates to keeping you informed and also making sure our policies align with what we value. And obviously we know that there are some policies that we have to comply with by state and federal guidelines. But again, there has to be some measure of mutual trust. I think another pillar that we would probably have to have as it relates to this would have to be a united board. A united board just means that our board speaks with one voice and that there's one common agenda for the work that needs to be done as it relates to our school district. And I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm listening to you as well and making sure that the needs of the board are being met and make sure that the goals of our school district align with everything that we do. So those are some of the pillars that I would think cultivates that relationship, and I own a significant part of that along with the board. Some people may prefer email, some may prefer text message, some may prefer phone calls. But whatever is going on in our school district, I have a responsibility to keep you apprised of those things. A well-informed board and a well-informed superintendent is a well-informed school district.
Tell us about your experience in the development and implementation of one specific program change or initiative. What processes did you use? How did you involve others?
So when I think about change, I think about Dr. Peter Singay's work related to the framework of change. His work talks about elements of vision, trust, resources, skills, an action plan, and a payoff. And what Dr. Singay's work basically says, in order to make change or to develop an initiative, if you don't have those 6 pillars of work, then you're susceptible to have sabotage, you're susceptible to have false starts and have anxiety and the like. When I think about a significant change or initiative that I was a part of as I was transitioning between principalship and director of secondary education, I value student mentoring, and we had a student mentoring program in which seniors mentored freshmen on that transitional piece into the comprehensive high schools. There was a particular program that we were using. I'll keep that program nameless, but ultimately coming in as a new principal, you understand you don't change anything, but I felt as though the program was too expensive, felt as though the program was a time sink on our staff members. Our staff members didn't see the benefit of the particular program, and so I wanted to better understand our metrics or our outcomes related to this particular initiative. Met with teachers who were leading the initiative. Some of them were dropping out of the program because they saw it as too taxing. Some of the teachers didn't like seniors interrupting their instructional day and pulling kids out for mentoring purposes. So I involved the entire staff. I spoke with those who were part of the initiative that dropped out. I wanted to better understand why they stopped doing it. I wanted to talk with seniors who experienced the program as freshmen and are also mentoring as seniors. And eventually what we were able to do was to switch our providers or our company. We went with the Boomerang program or Boomerang project. It's called Link Crew or Web. The middle school version is Web, where everyone belongs. And what we were able to do by switching providers, this was a train-the-trainer model where our teachers were trained up in the Link Crew program, given the strategies, given a curriculum. Our teachers didn't have to depend on the vendor for every single direction. The vendor was the resources, but it was designed for us to sustain our own work. From that, as I started that as a principal, moving into director of secondary education, it started in the high school in which I was a principal of. It taught our seniors a lot about leadership. They used a lot of that work for college applications. Taught our freshmen how to transition into the high school. What ended up happening was our sister high school said, if this high school is doing a great job as director, I helped our second high school implement the same program, Link Crew. And then our middle school teachers and principals said, if you guys are doing this great work at the high school, what can we do at the middle school level? So we brought Web, which is the junior version of Link Crew, into the district. So all 4 comprehensive middle schools currently do Web. Our 8th graders mentor 6th graders, and our high schools do Link Crew, juniors and seniors mentoring freshmen. And that change happened almost seamlessly, and people quickly forgot that we had another provider or vendor that wasn't well respected in our school district. But again, we wanted to get voices in the room, and I really depend on Dr. Sengay's framework related to change.
What unique skills or experience do you bring to this position, and how will the Lansing School District be served by this?
Unique skills. I'm a collaborator. I'm a listener. I am a person that want to make sure that our decisions aren't viewed as top-down. I like to be in a position in an environment where there's creativity and innovation. I want our teachers to be on the cutting edge of best practices as it relates to teaching and learning. And I want our administrators to be on the cutting edge as it relates to instructional leadership. So I'm okay and I'm comfortable walking schools with our principals, elementary level. I'm okay sitting in kindergarten classrooms and listening to our students read and learn to read over the course of time. But what you come is a person with high integrity, person who comes into this experience as a 19-year educator, having worked in the urban environment in Saginaw Public Schools, Lansing School District, and Kalamazoo Public Schools. So I am comfortable with the work and the mix that's here in Lansing. I think people would say I'm a people's person. I believe that the higher you go in an organization, the more interpersonal skills you need to have with people who work for you and work with you. I am collegial, and I believe that those who have worked with or for me will always say that they felt comfortable in space with me, okay to take risks, okay to run ideas by me, and always have a high level of mutual respect so that people know that they feel valued in the work that they're doing.
Tell us how your previous professional experiences in education have influenced you as a leader.
So my previous experiences, I even look at from a childhood, being raised in Saginaw. I'm a Saginaw native, born and raised there before I came to Michigan State. Even as a student, I was always fascinated with education. Math is my background, so numbers were always appealing to me. But the experiences were, even a guest speaker who came into my classroom, and some strange reason, I remember assemblies and I remember guest speakers we had, like the face. I remember where I was at the time. I was always intrigued by people's stories. I was always intrigued by their success, how did they overcome those challenges. Being raised in a pretty tough environment, had to build up some measure of resiliency in order to overcome some barriers, not unlike many of the children here in Lansing, but also having a good environment where my parents said, hey, you're capable of college, you're capable of doing this, you're capable of doing that. And they help nurture my strengths in order for me to be developed. So I was always looking at education, and I really didn't realize this, but I was always looking at education from the lens of a learner as a student. I was fortunate to have a great student teacher, mentor teacher here in Lansing School District. She helped shape some of my things related to homework, and she had a motto that said, I would rather give my students one problem, have them solve it 30 different ways, than give them 30 problems and have it solved one way. And those type of things I picked up and I learned. I moved into assistant principalship, working with 2 veteran principals there. I like to read, short briefs related to education, and not just education locally, but statewide and nationwide. I want to be stay abreast of trends as it relates to education. So, I don't have a defined way of capturing all of these experiences other than saying that I try to grab a little bit from people that I've worked with, make it my own. And then I'm also willing to try out different things that I've learned about, I've been trained in order to round out my experience. I'm always fascinated by the plumber who comes to your house. Very rarely does the plumber leave to go and get a tool, because they bring the tool kits with them every single day. They may only need a screwdriver or a hammer, but they have a whole belt of tools available to tackle a problem, a water leak, or whatever they encounter. And I view that the same way in education. I want to have toolkits within my belt to be able to come in different environments and use what I've learned over time to be a better and stronger administrator and superintendent as well.
We appreciate your interest in becoming our next superintendent. Do you have any questions for us?
Again, I just would like to thank the school board for the opportunity to interview here at the Lansing School District. I know we have an hour time limit, and you have a pretty long night tonight and tomorrow night, so I wish you well. But at the same time, I've had the opportunity to read about the district, obviously formerly worked here, and still staying connected to the Lansing area as well. So I don't have any specific questions. I've enjoyed this opportunity of answering your questions. Hopefully my resume, cover letter, and other experiences. Lansing, you have a lot of good things on the ball. And what intrigued me about this position is the strong correlations that I saw in Kalamazoo and also Lansing. The way you've done your pathways, your promise pathways as well. You have a Lansing promise, we have a Kalamazoo promise. You have magnet or theme-based schools. We have some of those as well. And I've worked in those areas as well. So I appreciate the opportunity. I have no questions at this time, and I am truly grateful and humbled by the experience of being selected as a potential candidate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your interest. The board is interviewing a number of candidates, and we will contact you if you are selected as a finalist. Again, audience, please fill out your feedback forms. Please take a 4-minute break this time, and we will reconvene at 7:30.